How do I really know what's true?
My friends say that truth is a personal thing.
Was there a design for the universe?
Is there even a God out there?
Why do I feel guilt? Is there a plan for my life?
The questions we ask have answers. Legacy of Truth and author Peter Bocchino present Rooted, a film-based apologetics resource created by young adults for young adults.
How do we live a meaningful life?
There's a lot of people that they're unsure.
Really wanting a sense of direction, a sense of purpose.
What do I really believe about this, and why do I believe this?
Rooted, a DVD resource designed by college students for teens and young adults.
Through the art of film, Rooted helps teens critically analyze the truth claims of Christianity.
Peter Bocchino from Legacy of Truth and Taylor University's Communication Arts Department introduce a different kind of apologetics resource designed for group study.
Short films, created and directed by college students, serve as discussion starters, engaging youth groups to think seriously about truth, science, morality, and ethics. Rooted. Go deep.
Peter Bocchino is president of Legacy of Truth Ministries and co-author of Unshakable Foundations, Contemporary Answers to Critical Questions about the Christian Faith. He is an expert in curriculum development, working with state educators and on campuses around the world, but he also teaches people like you and me to know how to think and how to give an answer for why we believe what we believe. Please welcome Peter Bocchino. Because early on you talked about Aristotle's concept of first principles. Why are first principles so important?
Well, actually, the name first, that's number one, you know. And in education, there's really two dimensions to education. There's information, and we live in an information world. But information is just data that you memorize and recall. Most education's like that. And then there are principles to think about that information. And where do you start? Well, you start with first principles. And so the book starts with the first principle of all knowledge, which is the law of non-contradiction. But what's fascinating to me is in Jesus' own ministry, he used these principles. And he got people to think. That's why he hardly ever answered a question with data. But he asked questions that were principle-centered.
Well, give us an example of that.
For example, two good ones. I think Matthew 21, where he's confronted by his antagonist, and where do you get this authority from? Now, he could have just answered the question, I'm God's son. And that would have been data. But instead, he asks a question back. Basically, he moves the conversation from a personal, subjective realm by saying, well, let's talk about where does all authority come from. For example, John's baptism, where did he get his authority? So they had to answer this question to move to a principle where all authority comes from, rather than where my authority comes from. Another place would be where the rich young ruler comes to him and says, good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Now, most of us, if somebody asks us that question, we give them an answer. But he asks this question to him, what do you mean by good? Why do you call me good? So he gets him to think. He actually goes inside the mind of the person by asking that principle-centered question and gets them to think about what they mean and how they come to that conclusion about what is good. So those are principle-centered kind of ideas. We all use logic. Whether we use it right or not is the question. And first principles they're fundamental ideas. So in other words, the way the book was set up is to help somebody think through in a fundamental way. And we're not talking about very complicated ideas, but ideas that are fundamental to everything else. Declaration of Independence, it's 4th of July coming up. Those are first principles. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That's what a first principle is. And then what they hold as self-evident, of course, are three ideas. And that is the idea of a creator, creation, and moral absolutes, individual rights, right, that nobody can take away. So those are fundamental ideas that we can all think through, and we do, in fact, think through together. And the book is, remember, young people are going through math, science, they're already indirectly learning inductive, deductive thinking skills. But nobody really takes it and says, how do you apply that to your belief in God?
So do you feel like this, you have a curriculum called Rooted, which is born out of this book, and it really sort of takes step by step a group through an apologetics course. Do you feel like this can be successfully implemented in the high school and college level?
Well, God willing, and under His authority, that's our hope, that this will at least be an introduction to critical thinking. And it's done in a way where, you'll see right on the cover there, students created films, short films, And why not use their ideas because they're good thinkers? So you have a media concept too. It's not just a kind of a talking head thing. And then we take them through a leader's guide that goes behind the films and does it in the same way, analyzes the philosophy behind the film. So we're hoping Rooted will, help to do that. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks.
When we come back, we're going to have a few words from Dr. Stanley.